7 o'clock, okay? I'll call the meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Beaker, roll call, please.
Delaney.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Musgrave.
Here.
Weinbrunner.
Here.
Kinnaman.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
McKinney.
Here. Under agenda approval, all items under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the village council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and support. Roll call vote, please.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Weinbrunner.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. We are going to move before public comment to a presentation by our police chief, Jerry Narsh. Chief Narsh.
Thank you, Mr. President, Council, community. I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize not only some of our officers on an incident that occurred on March 26, 2022, but also two citizens, one of which is representing here today. And I'm going to read Noah's first. This was a 911 call report to a man with a gun outside of a bar. And that's probably one of the most fearful calls you can get. On March 26, 2022 at 11:05 p.m., Noah McFadden was on duty as an employee at the Holly Inn. Mr. McFadden observed chaos inside the bar and saw a man outside near a window and believed a fight was occurring in the parking lot. Mr. McFadden did not hesitate to rush outside to help stop the disturbance. Once outside, he was confronted with a man with an AR-15 style firearm. Quickly determining options, Mr. McFadden placed the man in a bear hug to prevent him from raising the weapon, which, by the way, that was a great tactical move. Mr. McFadden then calmed the man and was determined to remove him from the conflict zone. Another employee of the inn arrived in a vehicle. They convinced the gunman to accept the ride home. Once back at the inn, they advised officers of their intervention and the gunman's location. Noah McFadden, without hesitation and at considerable self-risk, engaged the gunman and de-escalated a rapidly evolving threat, eliminating risk to inn patrons and employees. His selfless actions greatly assisted law enforcement in their mission to conclude the incident. And I wish to congratulate Noah. And Michael's not here, so I'd like to read Michael's as well. Same date and time, Michael Slate was serving as a private taxi service to Holly Inn patrons. Mr. Slate pulled into the parking lot and observed a fellow employee attempting to calm a man in the lot. Mr. Slate was not aware of the presence of a firearm. Mr. Slate was asked by a fellow employee to assist by removing the man from the scene by taking him home. As the man... Perfect timing. I'm making you famous. That's right. It's right here. He was employed as a private taxi service to Holly Inn patrons as Mr. Slate pulled into the inn parking lot and observed a fellow employee attempting to calm a man in the parking lot. Mr. Slate was not aware of the presence of a firearm. Mr. Slate was asked by the fellow employee to assist by removing the man from the scene and take him home. As the man entered Mr. Slate's vehicle, the firearm was then observed. Without hesitation, in a calm manner, Mr. Slate engaged in a conversation as he drove the armed man away from the scene, with a fellow employee assisting. Once back at the inn, they advised officers of the intervention and the gunman's location. Michael Slate, without hesitation and at considerable self-risk, engaged the gunman and de-escalated a rapidly evolving threat, eliminating risks to inn patrons and employees. His selfless actions greatly assisted law enforcement in their mission to conclude the incident. And congratulations, Mr. Singh.
Thank you very much.
And these guys to my left and to my right, Officer Richard Lindquist and Officer Brandon DeVita are being issued the Meritorious Service Citation. As on March 26, 2022 at 11:05 p.m., Officers Richard Lindquist and Brandon DeVita were dispatched to the Holly Inn on Saginaw Street for a report with a man armed with a gun outside the building, pointing the gun at patrons, causing panic. Upon arrival, officers determined the gunman had left the scene. Officer DeVita stayed at the scene to locate witnesses in the identity of gunman, while Officer Lindquist followed a lone set of tire tracks in the fresh snow to a nearby residence. The gunman was identified inside the home and refused officers' attempts to surrender. MSP troopers and the Oakland County Sheriff's Office SWAT team were contacted for assistance, resulting in the safe removal and arrest of the gunman. Both officers used their training and experience to quickly collect evidence at the scene and to locate and contain the gunman, resulting in the safe resolution and custody of an armed suspect and barricaded gunman. Their actions bring credit to the Holly Police Department and to themselves. Well done, gentlemen. And this is kind of off the cuff here, but think of a number between 1 and 50. Well, okay, it was 1. So he's low. And the reason I had to do that is I only have 1 lapel pin in my inventory. So, oh, wait, 10. I was going to say, I'll take it. 10. Yours is on the way. Thank you very
Somebody's going to
much.
file an appeal right away, I can see that.
I'm not good at math. I got into law enforcement. But I appreciate so much when citizens step up and assist in this mission, and there was considerable risk involved. But both these gentlemen did an incredible job on de-escalating that event, and that's really what we're all about. So thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Good night, Trooper. Nobody runs out on their tab at the Holly Inn, I'm guessing. It looks like Noah's
Large man.
pretty good security.
Yeah.
Public comments. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes for items not on the agenda. Council may extend this time up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. For items on the agenda, comments may be made after council discussion prior to council vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. Under tonight's agenda, there's no old business. New business, we have 4 items. Consideration of the approval of council action request to resurface Broad Street. Consideration of the approval of council action request to adjust paramedic pay. Special event, Memorial Day Parade. Special event, concerts in the park. And comments for those items should be reserved until after council discussion, but prior to council vote. I will now open public comment. I'm going to recognize Eileen Kowal, who's here from Oakland County. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, that was a tough act to follow. That's pretty amazing. I'm Eileen Kowal, and my address is 2333 Cumberland Drive, White Lake, Michigan. I'm currently a county commissioner representing District 6, which is White Lake and a good chunk of Waterford. After the redistricting, I'm pleased to have Holly, the village of Holly and Holly Township, as part of the newly constituted 7th Commissioner District. So I'm looking forward to working with people, getting to know you better. You've got a great community. I've been out knocking doors today in your community, and everybody's so friendly. And if elected as county commissioner, I will be in contact with you on a regular basis and act as a liaison between you and the county, and as well as the constituents of the village of Holly. So I look forward to more conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment, yes.
Mr. President, members of the council, good evening. My name is Rodney Panak. I currently reside at 11512 Center Road in Fenton, Michigan, 48430. I stand before you today as a representative of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Hewlett Bravender Post 5587 here in Holly, Michigan, wherein I serve as the post's oncoming chaplain and adjutant. I also serve our organization as the Junior Vice Commander for the VFW's Oakland County Commission. In conjunction with the VFW's National Still Serving campaign, the VFW has instituted a National Day of Service occurring throughout the month of May for our organization and the posts within our organization throughout the globe, in which we are looking for new ways to support our community. Notably, our organization is comprised solely of individuals who have been placed in harm's way or on the forward edge of the battle area in theaters across the globe, as well as family members of those that have supported them. We know all too well the importance of planning and logistics, as war is a science of variables. The more variables that one can control, the more tools at one's disposal, the larger the window for victory. And these are key elements to that equation. We, the members of the Hewlett Bravender Post 5587 of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, would like to offer another tool to the village's toolbox. We would like to formally offer our facility located at 201 Airport Drive here in Holly to the village for its use in episode planning endeavors in the event that there is any emergency situations that arise within our community. It goes without saying that our facility would be made immediately available to the public in any such event. We simply would like to formalize the process. Excuse me. And coordinate our endeavors with the community and the emergency response elements to be better prepared should such an event occur. Excuse me again. As a former incident commander at a large-scale manufacturing facility here in the Midwest, with a background in episode planning and emergency response, I understand the potential of this resource. Our facility is located only a stone's throw away from the village fire department. It is well apportioned to accommodate large groups with food preparation areas, ample parking, and a field that is able to accommodate helicopter operations. There are countless options. Our facility could be utilized as a media pad, staging area, warming facility, cafeteria, triage facility, decontamination site, etc. Although our commissions and our enlistments within the United States Armed Forces have concluded, our service to the community is not. We are in fact still serving. Please feel free to reach out to any members of our command should you find any use for our facility for the community in this regard. We are at your disposal. If I may, I'll switch covers briefly for a moment and rolls. I also stand before the council as a member of the American Legion's Ammo Schwartz Post 149. We, too, would like to do the same with our facility located at 408 Saginaw Street here in Holly, Michigan. This, too, is a facility well apportioned to accommodate assorted services. It is also yours for use in the community's episode planning endeavors. It's worth noting that our American Legion is only a stone's throw from our village police department. The proximity of these two facilities to our community's emergency response agencies, combined with their size and versatility, are elements that we feel are quite advantageous for future planning. Again, please feel free to contact any member of our command should you have any use for our facility in this regard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kristen, good evening. I was at the American Legion on Sunday. Ryan and I were there inspecting it, along with the pancakes and the syrup.
But did you get the biscuits and gravy? Is
I
the real
got
question.
I got the pancakes and the real maple syrup. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. Kristen Watt, 102 South First Street, number 3. Actually, I'll switch roles tonight. I welcome Eileen. I got to meet you this evening, and that was sooner than I even thought I would, so we're glad to have you in Holly. And I, too, am running for county commissioner on a different side of the ticket, but that's okay. And I think more ideas and more experience and more perspectives coming from all different people working together is a good thing. And I think that while I don't know that everyone's real thrilled about the redistricting of everything, I will say that sometimes we get complacent. It's time to shake it up a little bit. And I look forward to working with the county, with you, with Bob, whoever, however that unfolds. So I wasn't really planning on saying that tonight, but since you're here, I thought I'd introduce myself and we'd get that out of the way. The second thing is I didn't know Rodney was going to be here tonight, but I'm glad you are. And I just wanted to take a moment to, if you haven't had an opportunity, I believe he posted it in the forums, the 1MC, the podcast that he has started, and well, not you started, but you're trying to facilitate between the VFW and the American Legion. And I had the opportunity to be a part of that this last week. I never thought in my life I'd be on a podcast, so it was very weird. But it was super cool. I got to meet a young man named Paul Butler, who is a veteran here in our community, a young man who came back from the Marines, and I believe he was, what was he with April? The Grand Marshal, I think, in one of the hometown hero parades, and just listening to his stories and his experience, and just, again, listening to different perspectives and different things was really cool. And it's not a full-time gig. I just did it because I showed up along with whoever showed up. And I hope that, as so many members in here of so many long-standing organizations in Halley, from veterans stuff to the chamber to hometown hero to whoever you're affiliated with, HIA, any of our nonprofits, I hope that maybe I would encourage you to reach out to him. What he and volunteers have done underneath that bunker at the American Legion is really nothing short of amazing. To have this space that our community can use, and it's for everybody, to hopefully just kind of unite people and talk about different topics and educate people and get off social media and get back to like actually listening to people's voices and humanity and things like that. So I want to thank him for the work he did down there, and I also want to thank you for moving here and working on unifying people from the VFW and American Legion and whatever, because that's really what we need more of, I hope, and that's what I think. So I just wanted to kind of recognize him. I didn't know he was going to be here tonight. So anyway, but I hope that if you have something to say, call him. Go get on the podcast. That's what all the kids are doing now. That's what they do. The TikTok, and they listen to the podcast. So it's a great way to get information out there and just have dialogues that might not otherwise be had. So that's really all I had tonight.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thanks.
Any other offerings for public comment? I don't see any other offerings for public comment. Mr. Love.
John Love, 200 North Saginaw. I'd like to see what the status is of some of these projects that we have underway. For example, we have the pot deal with the 22 facilities that are going to put Holly on the map and move it into the next century. So I'd like to see that discussed and presented in some way. I worked on a recall and ran into a couple of incompetent Oakland County officials, the Oakland County treasurer and the Oakland County clerk, that can't understand why someone would want to recall the president of the village over this pot issue. But I guess the whole world is going to pot. The school deal, it's a renewal that added $40 million to the debt, and they're going to blow this building up now. And I don't know what the schedule is or what your knowledge is of what's going to happen and how long this process is going to take place. The other thing I'd like to see presented is what the status is of the $7 million federal gift, or whatever, I don't remember what it is exactly, for the village, how it's going to be spent, and if you're involved in that process at all, or just here's the bill and we've taken care of it. I think those are issues that need to be dealt with. So please arrange some kind of presentation on those issues instead of just let it drift along without the involvement of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Any further offerings for public comment this evening? Truly seeing none, we'll move on to new business, there being no old business. Number one under new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to resurface Broad Street. Mr. Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and Council. You have before you a council action request requesting authorization for approval to authorize the village manager to execute a contract on bids that are due to be accepted this week. This may in fact be a moot point because we have received word from Rowe Professional Services that due to the heavy construction season and the relatively small size of this particular job being less than $160,000, to date they have received no bids to complete this project. And so if that remains the case, we will look for another bid period when perhaps work is in a different state, when they have more workers or they have time in their schedules. But for right now, I think it's still necessary for me to present this to council, and I would ask that you indeed authorize the village manager to award the Broad Street resurfacing. And this project was going to run from basically Waterworks Park to the railroad tracks just past the police station. And if you've driven down that stretch of road, it's not a lot different than some of our other streets, better than some in other communities, but it's in a state that it needs to be repaired. The thought was that it could be repaired at this time for not to exceed $160,000 by doing a process called chip seal, where basically they take down the road surface in areas that need to be taken down, but they basically do an overlay with a product that would add several years to the life of the road and make it a smooth road. And so that was one process. So I have this before you tonight. The funds have been budgeted, and so they're there. But I would ask that council would authorize the village manager to execute any contracts necessary if we do in fact receive bids that do not exceed $160,000 for the resurfacing of Broad Street.
Any council member have any questions of Mr. Walker?
I think we all know it needs to be done.
And I'll make the motion that we authorize the village manager to award the Broad Street resurfacing project not to exceed $160,000 whenever it's adequate.
Second.
Second it.
It's 3 or 4 seconds. There's a motion and support.
I think we all, it's kind of a unanimous second.
We're gonna go with Buster. He was named by somebody else who also made the second. Motion and support. Any public comment before we vote on this? Yes, Patrick? Can you come up to the microphone, please, and give us your address?
Pat Beanie, 210 Franklin Street. Just a real quick question. Is it possible, like, if you put a bid out for that, if you had another small project, that you could have two companies, you know, say you had another project, say on Saginaw or something? Has that ever been thought? Because I'm thinking Broad Street's not going to get any bigger.
No, you're absolutely correct. So we have had that discussion with our engineers, Rowe Professional Services, that prepare these bids and then accept them and make sure that they're qualified contractors. And so we do have some other road projects. You know, we have Sherman Street, which is in need of repair. We have North Street, which is in need of repair, as well as some water and sewer work in College Street.
So if you found somebody who
And so
might
we
be
do have
interested.
some that we'll be looking at our next go around.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll be able to expand the project and maybe attract somebody if we get nobody for this.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Any further public comment before we have a vote?
Can I comment or ask a couple questions too?
Sure.
Okay.
Who are
maybe
you again?
Comment on that is 160,000 is pretty much what we can really expect to be able to afford at the time. Correct? We can't really afford to like double that project, you know, add something else and make it $300,000, $400,000.
Well, not this time. I mean, we have all heard, even though we had no official notification, that there will be additional funds that are going to be coming to municipalities. But we don't know the timetable on that. If, in fact, we did receive those, I mean, that is a possibility. And we do have some funds in reserve, although we certainly don't plan on using them for this project. But, I mean, I think Mr. Feeney's point is valid. If we were able to do it and there was a project, that certainly would be something we would look at.
Okay. And so if you make a selection to begin that project, will you be notifying us on council that that has been made?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything further? Any further comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Delaney.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Weinbrenner.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Item 2 under new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to adjust paramedics' pay. Chief McGee. It's a tough one, so it's being handed off to you.
Perfect. Good evening.
Good evening.
We were going to tag team this, but I'm happy to run with it. So really, this is just to reaffirm what we talked about during our budget meeting a couple Saturdays ago. This would start at now versus July 1st, which we have budgeted. It hasn't been approved yet. But this would, as you know how we got there, there's just a shortage of paramedics for a lot of reasons that I think I went on for about a half hour about that Saturday. So this is really the council action request asking that we would institute it now, effective May 29th of 2022 to start that new rate at up to $25 an hour with those incentives built in over time. The union did vote on it last night and not surprisingly unanimously approved it, getting a raise. So there was no problems with that. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Excuse me, are we competitive with other communities our size?
Not right now, no. We're a lot behind.
A lot behind?
Yes.
When you say a lot, what does that mean?
So we are $19 an hour now, and other communities like North Oakland's $22. The state average is, for a paramedic, just a paramedic, is almost $26.93.
Wow.
Firefighter paramedic is $28.84. And again, we're 19. So this would, depending on the level, if it's a person is just a paramedic, it would be $20 an hour, so $1 more than now.
Mm-hmm.
If they were just a firefighter and a paramedic, it would be 23. And then firefighter engineer, where they could drive the fire trucks and operate them, and a paramedic, that'd be the 25. And then there's some built-in incentives to make the people stay and encourage that and to lighten some of the load that we really need help with.
It would beg to ask the question, are we giving them enough?
Well, I'm sure they would like more, but unfortunately our budget won't allow that.
Okay.
But I appreciate that, and so do they.
Chief, on the second page, when you describe the additional increase of $1 per hour for each 1,200 hours, and then I don't understand how that last sentence relates to it. This will cap at a total of $5 in additional pay.
So the idea is that basically every year, if they worked one 24-hour shift a week, every 50 shifts, they would, as long as they took a leadership role or coordinated one of our numerous programs, they would get $1 raise each 1,200 hours. So, based on how quickly they did that, without going into overtime, obviously, would be when they could max out. So typically it would be a 5-year step. And because our union negotiations will be in 3 years from now, I'm sure that will come up then. But at this point, it's totally acceptable and makes good sense for us to hold on to people, encourage them to come back. And like I mentioned in the meeting, on that budget meeting on Saturday, the people that we recruit are not fresh green medics. They're full-time firefighter paramedics, typically in other municipalities. And the way their shifts work are they work every other day for 3 days and then have 4 days off. And on those 4 days, They normally sleep the first day trying to catch up from working all night, but then on the second or third day would be available and come to us trained, and so with a lot of experience. So we get very qualified people that way.
So the increase in pay is not for the 1,200 hours, it's,
No,
Oh,
no,
all right.
that would happen if they fulfilled.
if they fulfilled it. All right, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any further comments or questions? Mr. Walker, did you have something to
Well, I'm
add?
just going to say one benefit, if this is approved and if we are successful, as we feel we will be in recruiting additional paramedics, is it will relieve Chief McGee. I mean, he wouldn't say this in a public meeting, but the reality of it is he's been covering 1 to 3 24-hour shifts per week because we're in short personnel. And while we lose nothing by him doing that as far as the level of medical service, because he's an excellent paramedic, what we do lose is his services as a fire chief and a building official because he's not here to do that. So really, the whole goal of this is not only to get more qualified personnel for the fire department, but to free Chief McGee up so he can perform some of those other administrative and executive services that council hired him for.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I move to approve the pay adjustments for paramedics as requested.
I'll support.
Motion support. Mr. Love?
What's the number of people?
We have a total right now of 15 paramedics.
There's a motion and support. Any further public comment? Yes, Kristen? Would you please? Thank you.
Kristen Watt, 102 South First Street, number 3. I just had a quick question. I know it's more comment, not question, but maybe Mr. Walker could answer. With the ARPA funds that came in, I remember several meetings ago when we talked about that, like some was going to be delegated to the park, some to fire and police. Is that something, depending on the legality of where those funds can be used within those departments? Because when Councilman Powers asked, is it enough? Is this raise coming from the general budget of your normal budget, or is there additional funds that was going to be allocated to them that could be used? And on the other side of that, if the millage that's coming up for fire and police is approved, is there enough in that millage to actually incorporate the pay to bring them up to a better like state average than just even what's within their budget now?
Well, so certainly. So these pay increases, they are slated to come out of the general fund. And we did, in fact, talk about ARPA funds during the budget study session a couple of Saturdays ago, as Chief McGee said. And so really, anybody who is interested in talking more about those ARPA funds, I welcome you to come to the office, and we'll be happy to go over them. I mean, staff has made some recommendations to council where we thought they should go to needed areas, such as a new ambulance for the fire department, a new police cruiser, and some other emergency equipment for the police department, street sweeper for the public works department. And so just trying to divvy up where we can hit some needs that the village has with those funds. I mean, keep in mind that those ARPA funds at this time, we've only been awarded $643,000. And so when you think about that, it sounds like a lot of money, and it would be a lot of money to us personally. But when you're talking about street sweeper, that's $330,000, ambulance equipped almost $200,000, and things for Chief Marsh, unlimited, that's $643,000. Does not go very far. And so I would just say that. When you're talking about the special assessment that's going to be on the ballot, I mean, those are funds that indeed can be used for wages in the future. But that hasn't been determined yet because we don't, count our chickens before the eggs are hatched. But I would say this increase that council is going to vote on tonight, while it still would be slightly below the state average, because you have some very large wealthy cities that factor into that. In this particular area of North Oakland County and southern Genesee County, it would put us at the top or near the top with everybody around us. So we would be very competitive. So really, you're probably not going to attract any more people if you made the wage, just throw a number out, $35 an hour as opposed to 25, because we're still at the top. And so, I mean, that's what we look at. We talked about what was the appropriate level to set it at. And as the chief said, depending on the success of this and where it goes and where the village is, in 2.5 years, we open up contract negotiations again with the fire department, and we will address wages then. Yes.
Mr. President, I have a quick question. But it is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that ARPA funds may not be used for wages?
So not for wages itself, it can be used for extra pay.
Okay.
For the first responders, kind of like a bonus.
Okay.
We chose not to do it this time. The first responders, they did receive bonus pay back in the CARES Act day, a year and a half ago, if you recall. But at this particular time, we think that there are greater needs within the village that money can be channeled for. And while, again, we don't count on the extra money that Mr. Love referenced previously, we do think that there will be money sometime in the future. I killed the battery on this mic. I got another one.
We have motion support. Any further comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Definitely yes.
Weinbrenner.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you,
very
Chief.
much.
Thank you, Council.
I think we can combine items 3 and 4, can't we?
You certainly could if you wanted to, sure.
Unless somebody, well, if somebody wants to object, we can have separate votes, I guess, but.
Do both.
Yeah, we can do both. Items 3 and 4, special event Memorial Day Parade. I don't anticipate any objections. Item 4, special event concerts in the park. It's right out my back door, but I have no objection. What's the pleasure of council?
Just a quick question. How is number 4 being funded?
That's a Chamber of Commerce event.
Chamber, okay. Great.
I'll make the motion that we approve the 3 special events. Actually 2, 3 and 4, Memorial Day Parade and concerts in the park, since the other one is the chamber.
Motion by
Second.
Musgrave, support by,
Second.
Another comment. What's the date?
we have a motion, I think we had a support.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. We have a motion and support. Before we take a vote, Mr. Love has a comment. Mr. Love, can you?
The date of the concert.
So the
There's several
concerts
dates.
are June 16th, July 21st, August 18th, and September the 15th, all at Crapo Park in the Pavilion from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30.
Can you read those dates?
June 16, July 21, August 18, September 15. Yes.
Any comments or questions of council members? Roll call vote, please.
Powers.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Weinbrenner.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Reports, Mr. Walker?
Yes, thank you. I actually had promised the village president at last night's DDA meeting, no manager's report tonight, but I couldn't help myself. So you have before you, I put a short memo, and it talks about the marijuana licensing consideration. This may answer one of Mr. Love's questions. So as you know, in previous council meetings, we had talked about the process a little bit. And so the process for acceptance of license applications closed on March the 31st. After that time, from March the 31st through May 31st, a committee consisting of the clerk treasurer, the police chief, and the fire chief / building official are in the process of going through each of those applications to make sure that they contain all of the required information pursuant to the application requirements. After May 31st, within the day or two after that, all of the completed applications that have all the required information will be delivered to council. And so at that point, it would be appropriate for you to begin your review of those applications and your consideration. And as we talked before, in the ordinance itself, there are 11 specific criteria that council is to use when evaluating those applications. Plus, you'll have the entire application packet anyways, and some of those applications are upwards of 500 pages long. So it's not going to be something that we can just do in the weekend before the next council meeting. It's something that you'll want to work steadily on when you're going through. We had talked about that council would then, at the council meeting in June, which is on June the 28th, because remember, we moved the council meeting to the last Tuesday of the month. On June the 28th, that council would vote to award those licenses. And really, in all practicality, it'll be whatever 2 licenses, because there are only 2. And that's all that was applied for was retail licenses or dispensaries. And council had authorized only 2. So council will vote for their top 2 selections. My recommendation would be that if you end up with a vote that night, you'll go right around the table. If you end up with a vote and there are 2 clear winners, for lack of a better word, applications that receive the most votes, those would be your licenses. If for some reason you had a tie for either one or both positions, it's up to council's discretion. My recommendation would be to schedule then another meeting and have 15-minute presentations by whomever those applicants are that were tied in votes. So you may have 3, 4, 5 people that may be tied for votes. I don't think that'll be the case. I think it'll be less than that, but it could be. And you'll have a chance then to hear directly from them, ask a few questions, and then make your decision. But that will move the process along. I think if it's I do think it's possible that council can look at all the applications that you get through or delivered to you and be ready to take care of those on the 28th. But again, that's solely a council decision on how you handle this process once we turn them over to you after May the 31st. And that's all my report.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Bigger?
I was just going to make sure and remind everybody that the meeting next month is not the second Tuesday. It will be on the 28th. And also the meeting calendar for next year was approved by council tonight on the consent agenda. And I brought extra copies if anybody would like one. Just see me after the meeting.
I think it was included in our packet.
It was. But if you'd like a clean copy.
Board and commissions updates and council comments. Mr. Delaney.
The ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, did not meet in May due to lack of agenda items, and I have nothing further to report.
Thank you. Mr. Weinbrenner.
Nothing at all, sir.
Mr. Perkins.
I have nothing, sir.
Ms. Musgrave.
Nothing to report. Finance and personnel has not met.
And Mr. Kinnaman.
The Planning Commission did meet, and we approved the site plans for Taco Bell. And I think they are working out a few things with the County Road Commission and some other needs they have to work on, but we have approved it. So their desire is to be open sometime in July, so they'll make the building as fast as they make tacos.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
That's quite expedient.
Maybe a comment on the concerts in the park. Yes, the Chamber of Commerce, we spoke with the Parks Commission and decided that we would handle those, and I have been actively lining up entertainment for those 4 dates. The first one in June is completely secured. The last one is secured, and the two in the middle I'm still working on a little bit. That first one in June will be the opening band will be the jazz band from the high school, and the headliner band will be a paid jazz band that Mr. Baldwin is actually a part of. So that will be the first one.
Mr. Baldwin, the conductor of the high school band.
Yes. And we do have contingency in the event of inclement weather that we would move them to the commons here, the cafeteria space at Carl Richter, so they will go on rain or shine. So also, we did approve last month the concert and food truck rally that will take place at Holly Foods parking lot on June 25th. And so that one's coming up rather quickly as well. And hope you come out and participate in some of our events.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
it.
Kinnaman. Mr. Powers.
I just have more of an announcement talking about the moving wall, which this is a replica of the wall that's in Washington, D.C. It will be in Holly from August 3rd to August 8th. And that's going to be quite an event. People have told me where this wall has been in similar sized cities. It draws over 20,000 people into the community. So it's a big, big event. And I'm hoping everybody will be able to attend it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. In that same regard, the DDA met last night, and it was requested that they help fund something that's appropriate for the DDA, a brochure for the event that also gives information about the village, where to get a sandwich or a coffee, and other information about the downtown. And there's a map that's available also. And the DDA voted $1,900.
Yes.
And the total cost is $2,900. And we're handing it off to the Richard and the chamber to help us close the deal on that brochure.
And we have a board meeting next week, so
And
we'll talk about it.
they're using we all saw the brochure for the
Michigan Historic Preservation Network Conference.
Michigan Historic Preservation Network event that's taking place next week,
This week.
This week.
Wednesday, actually.
Wednesday.
Yep.
So, and that brochure is going to be on the model for what we're going to do. And how many copies did they say would be available?
I don't recall.
Yeah, it was thousands, but I don't think it was 20,000, no. So
Actually, I thought it was 30.
5,000? Yeah,
Okay.
5,000. Somebody was paying attention at the meeting. So you should know that, and we'll move forward with that. Any objection if I adjourn the meeting?
Mr. President?
Yes. Oh, Ryan, you have a report for us? Sorry, something besides having breakfast on Sunday, right?
You mean inspecting the agent
Right.
along with breakfast? At this time, other than I just want to thank the fine officers that did a fine job that night. I have no report other than that, and I just want to congratulate the fire department as well on their raises. And other than that, I have no report.
Okay, thank you. Any objection if I adjourn the meeting?
Go
No
for it.
objection? Meeting's adjourned.
Good. You couldn't have this.
45 minutes, 40